Hello, everybody. Welcome to this evening's live stream. I'm going to give it a few minutes for some people to join, but I wanted to thank you for taking some time out of your day to join me, especially on a weekend. There may be some family activities going on this weekend and tonight. And so I just appreciate you being here. And I'm here for support. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to help you navigate the holidays because I know they're going to be very difficult for quite a few of you. But if you're joining us, please type in the chat where you're from. And hey, Fernando from Las Vegas. You're welcome, sir. Thank you. Welcome. But if you're coming in, please type in the chat where you're from. And if you have any questions to start off with, I'll be glad to answer those. I do want to go through a couple of just kind of set the tone for this evening because while we only have an hour, it's very valuable time for all of us because as we're navigating the holidays, I know this is hard for you. I'm sure it's not easy in a lot of ways. And I just would like to give all of myself to help you navigate these next few days because I'm sure a lot of you just want everything to go by as fast as possible. And so, yes, please type in the chat where you're from and tell me if you ask any questions. Here's why I'm doing this. About 10 years ago, it'll be 10 years next month that my daughter Zoe died, but 10 years ago, I was in a place where nobody wants to be. In fact, everybody who's on this call tonight doesn't want to be in this place where we're grieving the loss of a loved one. And obviously, after that happens, we have that first year that goes by. A lot of firsts occur. First anniversary dates, first holidays, first activities and tasks without your loved one. And that is very hard to navigate those firsts. However, when we start to get into the second year, the third year, the fourth year, the fifth year, we're not necessarily getting things aren't getting easier. We're getting stronger every step we take forward. And so as we're navigating the holidays, it's really important for us to try to find any level of support that we can find in order to help us navigate these days. I only wish I had a resource similar to this when I was navigating that first year without my daughter and subsequent years. And so when I thought about doing this, I'm like, we all need support around this time of the year. We need to talk with people who understand what we're going through, who get us, who can articulate some of the things that are in our minds that we want to say, but we don't know how to say. And so, but I remember that first year after I lost my daughter, Zoe, I was approaching Christmas and I was very scared because the grief was just brutal. It was so hard to try to figure out what was going on and how I was going to navigate that. And so I found myself struggling with so many different questions. Like, what am I going to do about this holiday? I just wanted the month to go by as fast as possible. And if you feel that same way, please type yes in the chat because I know how challenging it is. And there's a lot of stress around this time of year. There's a lot of just sadness and the grief could be very heavy. And I believe during the holidays, it's amplified. And that's exactly how I was feeling that first year. So yes, thank you guys for acknowledging that. Every holiday, every anniversary, but this time of the year seems to be like it used to be the happiest time of year. Now it's the worst time of year for some of us. And so I was in that space, sitting on my couch, watching movies, trying to figure out, just how to get through this month because it seemed like time was slowing down. It wasn't going by fast. The time to get to, Christmas time went very quickly, but this was just dragging on and it was really hard. It almost felt cruel in a way to have to navigate the holidays without Zoe. Again, if that resonates with you, please type yes in the chat. But I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching a movie, A Christmas Carol. It's been a favorite of mine for the longest time. And there's a scene towards the end of the movie where Scrooge is pleading with the ghost of Christmas future. Uh, you know, he realized his error of his ways, and he realized the error of his ways when he saw Bob Cratchit mourning his son, Tiny Tim, and the connection I made between Bob Cratchit and myself in that moment hit me. But then it was also Scrooge's redemption in that same time frame where he realized the error of his ways. He didn't have a good upbringing. The character of Scrooge didn't have a good upbringing. His father didn't care about him. And here he sees a father caring about his son who's no longer here, and the love never goes away. And in that moment, I had a breakthrough that the love for Zoe was never going to go away. And I remember Zoe being always so happy about Christmas and wanting it just to come and happen. And she loved to decorate the house. And here I am sitting in my couch with absolutely nothing out. And I don't know what it was. I just had a small little burst of energy and inspiration. And I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go set up the tree. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. So I go upstairs in my attic space. I dig out my tree. I bring it downstairs. It's a fake tree, 4-foot fake tree. But as I got the lights plugged in, as I got the tree plugged in, those lights came on, and I felt a little stir of love, if that's all I can describe it. And then I then opened up the box of ornaments, and what happened at that moment just blew me away. I couldn't believe that what my eyes were seeing. I see this pile of ornaments that normally every year I would just put it on the tree and be very happy. But what I realized in that moment is that almost every one of the ornaments on the tree Zoe made with her sister over the years. And I was just receiving the best gift that I could ever receive during the hardest time of my life. And look, I know for a lot of you, it may be really hard to even comprehend even doing anything around Christmas right now. And by the way, if you feel that way, that is okay. I am not saying this to put any guilt on anybody or try to force you to do anything that you are not ready to do. But all I can say is that there is the love that you have for your loved one who's no longer here. It will never go away. And as time goes by, you will start to be reminded of those. You'll be more reminded of those better memories and those good memories you had with them rather than this really difficult time right now. And I'm hoping for each of you that as you reconnect with yourselves, as you emerge from the deep parts of your grief, that Christmas time becomes a time of happiness for you again. I'm 10 years out. I still have a hard time. I cried today just thinking about Zoe not being here, but it was a moment. I moved through it, and now I'm here because I want to help you navigate this holiday as well. And so I hope that was helpful in some way to understand that love never dies. And yet at the same time, as you're navigating this holiday season, it's so important to give yourself some grace to do whatever you can do as you're navigating the holidays. And by the way, here is one of the ornaments that Zoe made. It's a little angel. And it's a very simple thing. It was a $5 project that we picked up at AC Moore. And I absolutely love when I open up the box every year and I'm reminded that this was something that my daughter did for me and brought some joy to my life. And I get to carry that with me for the rest of my days. Yes, I'll always miss her, but this is beautiful. This brings a lot of joy. And at first it was hard, right? It's hard. I understand that this is really hard. There's another, it's a 2x4, but Zoe painted this when she was 5 or 6. This stays out all year, by the way. This isn't something I put away. This is something that stays out on one of my bookshelves, and it's great writing here. Merry Christmas. But it's one of those things that I'm just so grateful for to have that. Before I get into the questions, I wanted to share some resources with you guys, because one of the things that has helped me the most in this journey of navigating grief is to kind of get an understanding, find some meaning in the loss. I am a sponge for trying to understand why. And what I've learned over the years is that we may never fully know why our loved one had to leave before us, and that we ask that question of why in so many different ways. It's almost an infinite number of whys that we ask. Why did they have to go? Why did it have to be them? Why do I have to deal with this pain alone? Why? And in my search for meaning, I've learned that it's not so much about asking why did something happen to them, like to Zoe, but why am I here now? What is my purpose? What's next for me? And I've shifted my perspective from why to what. What am I going to do? Not what am I going to do about it, but why? What am I going to do that's going to allow me to take another step forward, if that makes some sense? And so, some of those resources and I'm going to drop a book list in here. There's no obligation, folks. There's no obligation to do any reading, but I just want to share some of the resources that have helped me tremendously over the years to navigate this very challenging thing. And I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, but I just want to point them out to you, and feel free to take screenshots if you'd like. I am going to drop the book list into the chat here in a couple of minutes. Of the resources, I'm going to put the name and the author. But so the first book that I read many years ago is called The Alchemist. In fact, I read this before Zoe passed away, and it's a really good book about transforming. It's about who you're going to become in your journey of this lifetime, and that you are going to be faced with challenges along the way. But each time you're faced with a challenge, you have a choice. What are we going to do about it? So this is by Paulo Coelho. It's a very popular book. It's a very quick read. It's kind of done in story form. It's not a textbook in any way, shape, or form. I recommend this book. The next is this nice, wonderful journal that I got from a fellow podcaster. Her name is Heather Stang, and it's called From Grief to Peace. And I don't know if your screen is backwards. Mine is, unfortunately, with this live stream, but hopefully it's straight. Can you guys tell me in the chat if it's straight, if it's flipped appropriately so you can read the titles? But this says From Grief to Peace, a guided journal for navigating loss with compassion and mindfulness. And this is the second journal that I have gone through. And it's wonderful because it's a very guided journey. There's room to write here. There's room for other questions. There's room for some exercises in here. It's really cool. So great. Thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing that. Get it straight. This next book is from a friend of mine. Her name is Dr. Joan Rosenberg, and this book is 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. Joan and I have had extensive conversations about grief and loss. She's experienced it well, and this book here is so powerful because in it she writes as a psychiatrist that our emotions come at us from all different angles, but if we wait 90 seconds, most likely those emotions will pass. I recommend this book highly. It's so good. And here's another book that somebody actually gave me, but it's a really powerful book. It's called A Guide for the excuse me, for the Bereaved Survivor, and it's by Bob Bogger, I believe, PhD. This is a very good, simple book about like what happens with our emotions, what happens with understanding the reactions of others. I would highly recommend this book. This is a quick read. I kind of used this as a reference for many years after Zoe passed away. The next book was recommended to me by my therapist. It's called Proof of Heaven. This was probably one of the most impactful books on my journey. Dr. Eben Alexander is a neuroscientologist, and he had a near-death experience, and in it, he learned so much about life and what's beyond this lifetime here on this planet. And obviously, it's there's a lot of discussion around this book and the topic, but it's a very good book. It kind of gave me hope that Zoe knows that she's on the other side, right, and that she's kind of leaving gifts for me, if that makes sense. This next couple of books are related to some very difficult topics. This first one is Surviving My Husband's Suicide, and it's by Kathleen Brock. This was a very quick read as well, and it's a very helpful book about navigating suicide of a spouse. So I highly recommend that one. Um, this is Loving Lions, and I know Michael Wilson. This is about an addiction, and how we as family members or friends navigate the loss of a loved one while they're still here, if that makes sense. And so, if you're struggling with addiction in your family, or if anybody that you know of has overdosed and is no longer with us, this is a really good resource. Loving Lions. This next book here is by Christina Rasmussen called Second Firsts. Fantastic book. Christina also has a podcast on grief as well. It's a step-by-step guide to life after loss. I read through this very quickly this year, and I was just blown away by how important it was. She's got another book. It's called The Waiting Room, and I haven't read that book yet, but this is a very good book. Another book is by a gentleman named David Kessler. You probably have heard of David Kessler, Finding Meaning. This is he and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross really define the 5 stages of grief. And we know from our processing of grief that it's not linear, that we move and it is fluid as we're moving through our grief, right? One minute we're angry, some minute we're depressed, one minute we're kind of smiling, and the next minute we're crying. So in this case, he has defined this finding meaning as the 6th stage of grief. This is when you're emerging from the deep grief. So I would highly recommend this book. Another resource that's very powerful is Option B, written by Sheryl Sandberg and Adam Grant. This is Sheryl's, and if Sheryl is the former COO of Facebook, and she writes about losing her husband, Dave, while they were on vacation and the process of her going through the grief. Here's what I realized about this book. Sheryl Sandberg is a very successful business person. And it doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter how much money we have in the bank. It doesn't matter what type of job we have. We all navigate grief in a very challenging way. And this is kind of what she's highlighting in this book. The other book here, and I'm not trying to, toot my own horn here, but this is the book that I wrote a few years ago called A Sherpa Named Zoe, How to Walk Through Grief and Live with Intention. In this book, I detail my experience of navigating losing my daughter, Zoe. And so this, hopefully, if anybody has this book, it's a quick read as well. And I wanted to make it easy for people to understand, at least a parent's, anybody's experience of navigating grief and what that could look like. So I just got a few more here, and I appreciate you guys being patient. I'm going to get to the questions here pretty quickly here. One book that I've read a few books this year specifically that have just been really powerful for me. This one is by Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. And Dr. Frankl was a prisoner of war during World War II. And the resilience that they had to develop when they were in the concentration camps is just, it is unbelievable powerful. It's unbelievably powerful how strong the human spirit really is in the darkest of times. And when I was reading it, I was just finding all these parallels with you and I and anybody who's navigating the loss of a loved one, how hard it is, but we endure, we keep going. You do things like this. You jump on live streams because you want to know how to navigate your loss. And it's taking that one step forward. So it's a very powerful book. This next book, as I read, is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I was really surprised by this book. He had an experience where he spent 3 years in not a monastery. It was maybe it was monastery. I don't know what they're called. Anyway, and it's escaping me. But this book is very powerful because he kind of talks about how to approach really difficult situations in life, and this is really powerful. This next book that's ultra powerful that I am going to read again, I read it earlier this year, is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Here's the premise of this book. We can't do anything about the future that's not here yet. And we worry about it when we think about the future that's yet to come. We can't change the past, yet we're depressed when we think about the past and what has already happened. We can't do anything about that. The only thing we can do right now is to focus on the present moment that we're in. Every second is the only thing we can focus on right here, right now, because that's in our control. And so we can't change what happened, but we can change what happens next. And those decisions are made now. I hope that helps. Just a couple more books here that I'll talk about, both by Ryan Holiday. One is called Courage is Calling, really powerful. And the other one is Discipline is Destiny. I just finished this one today. And these are really powerful books about how to access your inner strength, if that makes sense. And we all have it. I was drawing a lot of parallels in here as well with folks who are grieving the loss. And the last book I'm going to share with you today is The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. This is a wonderful book because in this book, he details this term, this internal energy that we all have called resistance. And I'll get into that as we start to navigate some of these questions here, but I just wanted to share that with you. I hope that list was helpful. And by the way, there is no obligation to do any reading whatsoever. It may be the furthest thing from your mind right now, as Eagle Rockers writes. He's like, Ollie, I'm having a hard time reading. I get it. So there's no problem with that. I just want to provide this for you. Feel free, by the way, I'm just about to post the book list in the chat. And let's see, can I do that? I might not. Oh boy. Okay. Hold on one second here, guys. Okay, so there's that. Give me a second here. I'm just going to post a couple more because there's only so many characters you can have in here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Whoops. No, I guess not. Hold on. I'm sorry, guys. I just want to make sure I get this to you so that you can. Okay, here we go. Okay, whoops. Okay, and then paste. Okay. Let's see, one more. Sorry, guys. I am so sorry about this. I should have had this figured out before we jumped on tonight. Okay. Whoop. Tell you what, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to post these. I'm so sorry. I'm going to post these in the description of the video later on. I'm sorry. This is crazy. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. I will definitely post more of these here in the comments for the video after the video is done. And it probably tells me I need to have somebody to kind of jump in and help me with these calls. Anyway, here we go. So Fernando wrote here, hi, Eric, greetings from Las Vegas, and thank you for sharing these knowledge for all of us. You're welcome, Fernando. Thank you and welcome. If you have any questions, please post them. If you guys have any questions about the books, or let's talk about the holidays. Let's talk about how we're going to get through the next few days. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. Obviously, Christmas is on Monday. I'm going to do another session after Christmas on December 26th. You're welcome to join. It's the same thing. It's a Q&A. I'm going to use the 26th as a kind of time to debrief, if you will, about how Christmas Day went for you. And so feel free to jump on as well. Let's see here. Eric Martin in Los Angeles. Hey, Martin, how are you? My husband died September 28th, and I'm deeply grieving. I'm skipping over Christmas this year. No cards, no decorations. Yeah. I thank you for posting that, Martin. I'm really sorry. I know this isn't easy at all, and it's absolutely okay to do whatever you need to do to navigate the holiday, sir. Um, it's okay. There's no wrong way to navigate it. And here's what I would like to offer for you. If you are approaching the holiday on Monday and you're really worried about, how the day is going to go, I would like to give you this 3-step framework to navigate the day. Okay. The first step in this 3-step framework is to write down a plan for Christmas Day. And here's why that's important. When you write down a plan for Christmas Day, it helps you to kind of be aware of what you will and won't do on that day. Meaning you might say, like, I'm going to go over to a friend's house, or I'm going to stay on the couch and not do anything. It's okay to do that. Okay. That's step one. Step two is to, when you get to the day itself, do as much as you can do. You have no obligation to go anywhere. If you've made plans, it's okay to reach out to your family and friends or whoever and say, I'm sorry, it's just not in me today. But it's okay to do that. So decide, on that day, uh, it's okay to figure out what you're going to do and do what you can do. The final step of this process is to give yourself permission to change your mind, to navigate the day in the best way possible. And to just go easy. There's no wrong way to navigate the holiday except for the way that works for you. And so I appreciate, tell me if that makes some sense in the chat. I'd love to hear more. Hey, Lisa Marie, welcome back. Glad to see you again. Let's see, Stephanie's in here. Sharon Linford is from Michigan. It's Roanna from Michigan. Awesome. Heidi Flores is here. There's a great book about meaning by David Kessler. Yes, Finding Meaning. Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out, Heidi. How did you like that book? Was it good for you? Did you like it? Let's see. The angel ornament was lovely. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate that. Let's see. I just started reading my book. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I hope it helps some. Again, I tried to write it so that it would be a quick read because I know how hard this is. I just want to get right to the heart of the topic when I wrote my book. I didn't want to put a lot of fluff in there. I just wanted to come at it from of experience, a place of experience, and share that with people through story and example and anecdotal remedies, if you will, of how to navigate this very difficult path of grief. And so, oh, hey, Shelia, welcome from West Virginia. So let's see here. Yeah, my attention. So Martin writes that it's very hard to have some attention right now. It's gone down to 15 minutes for almost anything. That's you bring up a good point on that, Martin. When we go through grief, we get that grief brain. We get the fog where thinking, it almost feels like we're losing our minds. It almost feels like our brains are getting damaged because of the grief. And so if you're ever feeling like you're losing your mind or that you're going insane or crazy or feeling like out of sorts, please know that your brain is burning a lot of energy trying to process the grief. And it's normal and it goes away. It's just how your brain responds to the grief. It's trying to process it. It's trying to figure it out. It's trying to find that meaning. And if your loss has been traumatic, it's very challenging as well, because when we have a traumatic experience, maybe it's a sudden loss. Zoe's was a sudden loss. And because it's a sudden loss, your brain can't process it like normal memories, normal activities, and that our 5 senses take in. And so what happens is that this memory, this very difficult memory, goes right back to long-term storage where it doesn't get processed. And so from any type of trigger, no matter what that is, that memory comes back to the front of the processing center and tries to go through again. It's like putting a rock in a garbage disposal. It's just going to get knocked around. It's not going to get processed. And so if you are dealing with a traumatic loss, and this is for anybody that's listening to this call or is going to listen to this call later on, if you have dealt with a traumatic loss, please connect with a trauma specialist who can help walk you through processing of that memory so that it can actually get processed and it not cause a PTS response. And there are protocols out there that can make this happen very quickly within 3 or 4 sessions. You do not have to go through traditional CBT therapy to resolve your trauma because they're finding that that isn't as effective as a trauma protocol. So there's several out there. And if you have any questions on that, message me on the platform here. And actually, I'll put my email address in here. So if you have any questions, you can, let's see, there we go. Okay, so that's my email address right there. Okay, let's go ahead and get back to the questions then. So Nancy wrote Proof of Heaven and Second First, Please. Yeah, those are really, really good books. I can't even bring myself to read your mail. I don't know who No More Tears is, but you are spot on with what happens with our grief. You are not wrong. It takes time to get reconnected. I couldn't concentrate. I don't know about you guys. I could not concentrate for months on anything. I missed bills. I had a hard time remembering what I went to the grocery store for. I couldn't remember names of things that I used to know very, very well, like the back of my hand. It was gone. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening to my brain? So again, it just goes back to the fact that we're grieving and our brain's trying to process the grief. So let's see, I'm staying home alone. No More Tears writes, I'm staying home alone. I'm so mad at my family, acting like nothing has happened. It's only been since November 8th. And I'm so sorry to hear that. It's really difficult when you're trying to navigate the grief in the first place and there isn't a support system around you. It's even harder when it's the holidays, but I'd like to provide some advice for you today. There's 3 ways that you can get a support system in place, and it's really crucial. 1, family and friends. Now, if you don't have any family and friends that you trust, that will have your back, that will support you, that will listen to you without trying to fix anything, just to be an ear, then connect with them. And so I invite you to sit down after this call tonight and write down a list of the people that you trust implicitly, without doubt, that they would have your back. The next form of support that is really helpful are online support groups. You're with people who get you. A lot of times family and friends do not understand what we're going through because they haven't been through a loss. But if you've got an online support group or several groups, I'm connected to several groups. I have my own group called Let's Walk Together on Facebook. That's a free group too, by the way. So if you find it, join. There's 500 people plus in there, and there's great support in there. Why? Because we get what people are going through, and everybody kind of comes together and standing at your shoulder with you in companionship. So that's the second form, online support groups. The third best option for getting support and your support system in place is a counselor, a coach, or a therapist. And here's why that's important. Coaches, counselors, and therapists have most likely either been trained to help you with your grief, or they've been through the process of grieving a loved one and they've experienced it, and now they want to bring their lessons to you to help you navigate your path. That's what I do. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a PhD. I'm a DAD. I'm Zoe's dad, and that's enough. So I coach people through their grief. And so everybody has their own preference on who they like to work with, maybe one-on-one. However, I think that if you need immediate support and you're feeling like there's nobody out there, there are options. So please, either family or friends, online support groups, or a coach, counselor, or a therapist. And I hope that helps some. Let's see here. Gail wrote, I can pass by it with no problem. I think, Gail, you're referring to the holidays, correct? Lisa Marie said, my husband's family are not answering my phone calls. I just want to wish them a happy Christmas. but they don't want to talk to me. What do I do with that? That's a really good question. I hope what I just provided you was some guidance in this area. Here's what I would suggest to you, Lisa Marie. Take care of yourself. Here's I just had a conversation last night with a woman who I'll call her Jane, um, who just lost her husband not even 2 weeks ago. He took his life, and they have a 2 month old daughter. And we were talking last night, and she's like, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And I said to her that I said, "What is the most important thing to you right now?" She said, "My daughter." I said, "Then you put your energy into your daughter. You put your energy into you to navigate your way through your grief." Anybody externally to your household, whether they are with you or not with you, supporting you or not supporting you, it is important to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. And it's okay to do that. If I didn't take care of myself when I was going through my grief with Zoe, I wouldn't be able to talk to you right now because I'd still be stuck in that grief almost 10 years later. But when I decided, made the choice that it was going to be okay for me to take care of myself, to figure out my path, and obviously any other obligations that I did have to my family, which I Zoe's older sister, her older brother, those are people that are in my immediate sphere that I needed to make sure, at least I wanted to make sure we're good as well. And Zoe's friends, they looked at me, "What do I do with this?" I'm like, "I don't know. We're going to figure it out though." But so that's why a support system is so important. So if you're reaching out to people, Lisa Marie, and they are not responding, that's on them. It's not on you. And I know it hurts, and I'm sure it hurts a lot. But please turn that energy inward. We can find the peace inward for ourselves because nobody else is coming to fix this for us. Unfortunately, it is up to us. But here's the good news. You are stronger than you believe. You have more strength than you could even consider having. Why? Because you are here today, days, weeks, months, or years after the loss of your loved one, and you are still moving forward. It is hard. It feels like you've got a ton of weight on your shoulders, but every step you take you go forward, you are losing a little bit of that weight. It falls off. And so find those resources that will help you navigate and get that weight off your shoulders. Again, support groups, family or friends that are with you. There's even meetup groups, by the way, in your local community, church groups, whatever it may be. There could be some widow groups. There are typically local resources that meet face to face because maybe people don't want to go online. I get it if you don't want to go online. So I hope that helps some. Okay, so let's see. Gail, see, I found Christmas ornament and these snowmen that Teresa gave me. I just broke down. It was so hard without Teresa anymore. I'm sure that it is, Gail. I think you were on the other night, and I believe you mentioned the same thing. And I know it's so hard. And so here's what I would ask of you if for this time period is to sit down with a piece of paper or a notebook. I use journals, guys. I journal all the time. I had to get whatever's up here out on paper. So I've got my notes here and I journal. I just kind of bleed on the page, as they say. I write, I don't edit. I don't try to go back and fix punctuation, all that stuff, because it's not for anybody else. It's for me. Because when I start to write some things down, what I find is that I actually start writing some things that are going to be helping me. Little things like I like for you, Gail, you obviously love your daughter. That love will never go away. So I invite you to sit down and write about how the ornaments make you feel from a connection perspective to your daughter. Okay. And let me know if you want to do that and then come back on the 26th as well and tell me how that went. I'd love to hear that. Let's see. So Heidi Flores writes, it is the next step to find meaning of our loved one in order to honor them. I could go into several ways to find meaning, help others reach out to family members to remember them. I love this, Heidi, and here's why. What I found in my journey, and this, by the way, again, no obligation to do this, folks. When I help others, it is actually helping me. Every time I share my story of Zoe, I it is helping my brain heal. Story actually helps us heal. And so, again, if you're in a place where you can't even talk about your loved one without fearing that you're going to break down in tears, I get it. It may not be time to tell that story, but there are some good memories. Think about a very good memory from your loved one and something that just made you smile or laugh. And actually, let's do that for real quick. I'd like to just take us 30 seconds. I want you to think about a very positive memory from your loved one. Nothing bad, nothing that is sad. I'm talking about a good memory. And I'll just stop talking for about 15, 20 seconds here. As you come up with this wonderful memory, please type it in the chat. I would love to read what they are. You don't have to go into the whole story. Just tell me the topic of this good memory, okay? I have plenty of good memories about Zoe. We would go to the beach in the summertime. We would go to the beach in the wintertime, and we would pick up cold, wet, sandy rocks. I still have some of these rocks. I keep them with me because every time I look at these rocks, it brings a smile to my face. So tell me in the chat, what are some good memories that you have about your loved one? Okay. Let's see here. So Heidi's right. I love what you're doing on this, Heidi. I love that you're actually finding meanings because you're helping others and you're reaching out to family members. You're doing things that are helping you to take that next step forward. And that comes with time for anybody who's going through grief. Let's see here. There's George. Hey, this is Jorge. Sorry, from Austin. Hey, Jorge, how do you doing, bud? Good to see you on here. I've got Grindle Williams. How long did you have the grief fog? Oh, that's a great question. So the grief fog, I feel like grief fog, if you want to consider it like a cocoon, Grindle, that's kind of what the fog feels like, meaning nothing's really getting out and nothing's really coming in. People are talking to you. It's like, wah, wah. It's like the Charlie Brown teacher, wah, 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 right? You don't hear anything and it's really hard to think clearly. Now, how long that lasts depends on how you process your grief. Time is a contributor to this. There's no way around that. As you continue to process your grief, you will find that little by little, your memory will come back, the brain fog will go away, and you will start to emerge from the shock of your loss and start to really process the grief in a meaningful way. And then you'll find that you'll have more clarity about your next steps forward. Early on in our grief, it's almost impossible to figure out what's next for your life. That's one of those why questions that you have. Why am I here now? What am I going to do with my life? I couldn't have answered that question 2 weeks, 2 months, or even 6 months after I lost Zoe. It was too early. Instead, I had to focus on what I was going to do to help myself through this, if that makes some sense. So that's a really good question, and it varies for each person, Grindle. But it's a very good problem. And so, I mean, I don't know how long it's been for you, but if it's been, let's say 2 or 3 years, and you feel like you're still struggling with that brain fog, then I would recommend going and connecting with a counselor or a therapist because there could be something else that's preventing you from having that breakthrough moment where the fog will clear, if that makes sense. Let's see here. Let's see here. Nancy Brown. Whoops, I went way too far. Nancy Brown. I'm struggling with the impact this has had on me physically. Oh, that's a good one. So, Nancy, you're absolutely correct. When we lose a loved one, there's two things that hit us. There are two types of wounds that we get. There are not two types of wounds. There are. I want to make a comparison, a contrast between physical wounds and emotional wounds. When we are injured physically, let's say you're in a very bad accident, you are horribly hurt physically, and you go through the process of going into the hospital. and hopefully the surgery is successful, and now you're on the other end of this surgery or this procedure. Now the healing begins. What happens with that healing? It hurts to heal. Physically, it hurts to heal because the wound, that physical wound, is pulling itself back together. The cells are pulling itself back together to where that scar tissue is going to form, and it's going to come back together, and that scar tissue is going to be stronger than the original tissue. But we don't ever rush physical healing. We can't. We know that when we cut ourselves, it takes a couple of weeks for that cut to heal fully. If we have a broken arm or a broken bone, it takes months, sometimes 8, 12 weeks before we can actually get the cast off. So, why is it any different for our emotional wounds? Why do some people who can't see the wound, right? We can't see the wound, we feel it. Why do some people feel like that after 4 or 5 weeks of grief that that's enough, you should be fine? What? I'm sorry, that doesn't fly with me. And I understand that sometimes people have a harder time dealing with grief and other things because it's the emotional aspect. You are working through your grief. There is no timeline for your grief. It is going to take as long as it's going to take. You can help it along by taking actions like this, like you're on this call right now. You can continue to do things like this. Why? Because every time you work to try to heal your wounds, emotional wounds, you get a little stronger. You heal a little bit more. So please feed your soul with the healing. It's okay. And if somebody has a hard time or a problem with the way you're healing, that is not on you, that is on them. What I tend to do is I tend to not cut them off completely. I just tend to distance myself. Is that right? Yes, distance myself from them for a period of time until I feel as though I can have a different conversation with them. And you don't have to justify doing anything. You don't have to justify why it's taking you longer to heal. Um, it is none of anybody's business. There's no one right way to navigate this path except for the one way that works for you. So I hope that helps some. Let's see here. So No More Tears writes, where do we look for a trauma specialist? Um, Look, here's what I'm going to say on that. Uh, Google trauma recovery. Anybody who's struggling with trauma, Google trauma recovery in your area. And I can guarantee you there are trauma specialists very close by you. So whether they take insurance, most of them are doctors or psychologists. I'm a trauma specialist as well, but I work through a specific organization, and right now we're that organization isn't taking any new clients. And so, but Google it, trauma specialist in your area, and I think you'll get some pretty decent results. Okay, let's see here. Fernando wrote, my mom passed away last May. My grief tripled when my own siblings became greedy with their properties. I'm so sorry about that. Some people can get really weird in the grief. You know, family dynamics can change, relationships can change, attitudes towards other people can change. And that is a dynamic of grief that I think a lot of psychologists and researchers are trying to figure out why that happens. But here's the one piece of information or guidance I can give to you, Fernando, is to, find it in your heart to let go of that pain and that anger. Every time you are angry, it is like you drinking poison, expecting the other person to get sick. It doesn't do anything but eat you up on the inside. And so finding a way to release that anger as something that you couldn't control. The only thing we can control, again, is the here and now, this moment right now, and our actions and our behaviors. And I want to give you guys a little bit of a tool here to use when you're struggling, especially when things are making your emotions go way up. I'm talking about deep grief. I'm talking about deep struggle. I'm talking about anger. I'm talking about anytime your emotions go way up, that you're really angry, sad, almost at a panic state, and you want to find a way to get grounded again. And this is something that we have access to that's for free, which is really cool. Our body has a vagal nervous system. I'm not going to get all technical here. I'm not going to get into medical jargon and all that. But as your emotional temperature goes up, you go into a fight, flight, freeze, and fawn mode where your emotions are just like you're just very hypersensitive, right? And what we can do, and I'm going to show you this, we can actually take that emotional temperature from that fight, flight, and freeze down to calm and connected with a lower body breath. And you might be thinking, oh, come on. I mean, how is that? I breathe already. Of course we do. We have to breathe. However, when we are stressed out, when we are grieving, when we are really having a hard time, we're actually breathing up here. We're using muscles that aren't designed for breath. And it's telling our brain to stay in that fight, fight, and freeze mode over and over again. But by doing a diaphragmatic breath, like we do naturally when we're sleeping, we actually tell the vagal nervous system in our brain that it's okay. I can get grounded. I can get grounded where we can make better decisions. We can actually deal with the pain a little bit better, a little bit easier. And so to do a diaphragmatic breath, it's very simple. You're going to put a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly. And the reason you do that is because most people, when you say take a deep breath, what do? We're breathing up here. That's telling my brain to stay stressed out. So in this case, we're going to do it. I'm going to scoot back here. Let me do this. I want to show you very quickly. Don't make fun of my belly, by the way. All right. So when we do a diaphragmatic breath, we're going to inhale and we're going to expand our belly because the air is coming down. Our diaphragm is right under our ribs. When we inhale, we're getting all that air into the bottom of our lungs. And when we exhale, we push our belly to our spine. Inhale, expand your belly. Exhale, push your belly to your spine. If you do 3 to 5 of those breaths, folks, game changer. 3 to 5. You do it until you feel your calmness starting to enter in. You might have to do 10. But when you practice that, if you practice that in the morning, the second you wake up, throughout the day, anytime that you feel like you're getting emotional, really emotional, and you're having a hard time, do a few of those lower body breaths because they help tremendously. So I'm going to move on to Shelley's question. It's my first Christmas without my husband, plus our 11th wedding anniversary was on December 22nd. I just can't comprehend it all. I am numb. Shelley, you're not wrong about the numbness. It's very normal to have that numbness because it just doesn't make sense. Your brain is trying to make sense of what has happened. It's trying to find that meaning. It's trying to get that clarity. And so because this is very fresh for you, you're still working through that. The numbness will go away. The numbness will go away. Have family and friends around you. I know you're in my my free community, the Let's Walk Together group on Facebook. I love how you post in there. You're always coming in there and you're asking wonderful questions because you're working to find that meaning. And little bit by little bit, you're going to find that meaning. Little bit by little bit, that numbness is going to dissipate and you're going to feel more clarity about what's next for your life. So I hope that helps some. No more tears. My son died on November 8th. He was 29 and had a sudden cardiac arrest. I'm so sorry to hear about that. Losing any loved one is difficult, especially when it's something that is so fast, things that are just unexpected. It just doesn't make any sense. Even if we have a loved one who's been sick for a long time and they pass, it still hurts. There's there's nothing invalidated here. Every loss is important, and every loss, it matters for us because that's how we feel. That's how we navigate this world, through finding meaning. Let's see here. Lisa Marie, Heidi Flores, it sure does. Okay, I guess you guys were talking to each other here. Whoops. One word of caution: if the therapist is one, therapist one is going to, not a good fit. Yeah, listen to your gut. That's a great tip, by the way. And Heidi's right. If you go to a therapist and doesn't feel like it's a good fit, you don't have to stay there. I actually went to 2 or 3 therapists back when I was going through my divorce. Until I found the person who actually cared and wanted to listen and actually gave me something to work with. It's excellent advice, Heidi. Thank you so much for posting in that. So how to find a good trauma specialist. I hope that message I gave you, Google it in your area. There are good resources out there. There's a couple of protocols that you might want to look up, and you might want to write this down. There's ART, Accelerated Resolution Therapy, and then there's RTM, Reconsolidation of Traumatic Memories. Both of those are the protocols that I am familiar with. So again, Accelerated Resolution Therapy, ART, and Reconsolidation of Traumatic Memories. If you Google those two for therapists in your area that can practice those modalities, hopefully you'll find some. My mother passed, and Stephanie wrote, my mother passed in January of this year, and I keep thinking it will get easier once the first year is over. But the way my father is looking for a companion so soon angers me. Stephanie, you're bringing up two really good points here. The first is that as we navigate the first year, it's really hard. We're bracing this entire year of firsts. We don't know how we're going to be around the holidays. We don't know how we're going to be around birthdays or anniversaries, special dates, things that somebody should be here for, but they're not. And you're like, oh my gosh, what the heck? So when we get into the second year, we almost let our guard down a little bit because we survived that first year. Here's my guidance for as you go into the second year. Double down on taking care of yourself. That's honestly the best way to navigate the second year, because in some cases, that second year can feel harder than the first. And that's again, because you're lowering your guard a little bit. And I'm not saying you have to remain guarded, but double down on taking care of yourself, because as you take care of yourself and that guard comes down, your strength gets higher. It gets a lot higher, to the point where it doesn't matter if that guard comes down, because you've built some strength because you've been taking care of yourself. So I hope that helps some. Let's see. And then, oh, by the way, your father's looking for a companion so soon. I know it angers you, and it everybody heals differently. Everybody has their way of processing their grief, and everybody is on their own journey to figure it out. And I'm sure that it hurts to know that your dad is already looking for a companion. Maybe that's what he feels in his heart he needs right now. He wants that companionship of somebody else to help him potentially heal. And so it's not as though he didn't necessarily love your mom. It's that this is how he is navigating this, and hopefully being able to find somebody that can put some substance back into his heart. I hope that helps some, but I don't know your situation fully, of course. And so, but everybody heals differently. And so working through that. By the way, guys, we're approaching the top of the hour. I'm going to stay on a few minutes extra if that's okay with you, because I want to answer these questions. And so there's a few more in here, but I'm going to continue to move through these here. Let's see here. Thanks, Eric. I won't let them hurt me anymore. I'm learning to look after myself first. Really good, Lisa. And I'm feeling stronger each day. That's really good. Anyone who isn't respectful or kind to me can take a hike. I come first. Here's my guidance on that. You're not wrong at all. And it's not your fault, because you're trying to navigate this. The reason that I distance myself from people versus cutting them off, and I'm not saying you're wanting to cut them off, but when you distance yourself, you get stronger, and because you're working on yourself, and you're hanging around the people that do support you, that do have your back. Your strength is getting better and better and stronger. You're getting stronger and stronger. And so there may be a time for you to come back around with that person who wasn't there for you, and have a different conversation about maybe what you needed in that time. I had a friend who disappeared right after Zoe died. A really good friend disappear. I couldn't believe it. How is that possible? No calls, didn't even come to the wake, didn't come to the funeral, didn't send a card. Oh, like, what is going on? Like, I have been friends with this person for years, nothing. And in that early part, I recognized that they were probably having a really hard time with the grief itself, that it had nothing to do with me or Zoe. It had to do with something in their life that was unresolved that they needed to work through. And so I tried to find some compassion in that through the anger. I hope that helps some. But you know, you do have to take care of yourself. And no matter how that works for you, Lisa, that's okay. Um, let's see. Oh, Teresa's your sister. Thank you, Gail. Again, I'm so sorry. I thought it was your daughter. My bad. So Lisa said I switched to therapist. Best move I ever made. She's a look at that. She's a widow too, and she's very kind of respectful. So you found your person. I love that, Lisa Marie. Um, let's see. Let's see here. Okay, so I think No More Tears wrote, this was like a good memory. When my son was 2, he scared me by hiding in the toilet paper at Walmart. I mean, come on, who hasn't hidden in the toilet paper at Walmart, right? That's awesome. I love that. So that's hopefully that brings a smile to your face as you're reading that, as you're remembering that, because I think over the time as you start to heal, there's going to be more good memories that will come back into your existence than the bad memories. The loss is a hard hit, and it's a moment in our lifetime that is a pivotal moment. And so, but I can tell you that this bad moment does not outweigh all of the good times that you had with your loved one. And you'll start to see those good memories come back in more and more. And if you have an opportunity to kind of reflect on those, that may help ease your pain as well, because those memories are never going to go away, and your love for your person is never going to go away. Let's see here. So yes, so okay, so Martin writes here, my husband was a gourmet cook. His pasta and shrimp were to live for. Perfect. I like how you're putting to live for in here. Absolutely. That's great. What a great memory. I mean, maybe making those in his honor, how cool would that be? Maybe that's something you can do over this next week, you know, and it may be too hard for you, but if that brings a good memory up for you, there's no reason not to, at least when you feel able to explore that again. Let's see. Let's see here. Hubby would bring me a cup of tea and biscuits throughout the day when I was working without me asking, and because you work at home. So yeah, Lisa, that is a good memory, you know. And so how can you honor that memory? Here's what I did. Like, you know, similar in a similar vein, I used to bring Zoe and her sister to the beach every year up in when I lived in Massachusetts. In fact, I'm going to share something personal with you guys. This is, and it's so going to be so hard to see it, but this is a panoramic back before they had panoramas of Duxbury Beach up in Massachusetts. And I was kind of standing on the water edge looking, and there's a lot of rocks down there. It almost looks like the surface of Mars. But what I love about this, that's Zoe. Whoops, can't see it. That's Zoe walking towards the light. I know it's strange, but I love this picture. I haven't put it up yet. I'm sorry. But I love that picture, and it's always given me good memories to when I remember that. So let's see here. Shelley Wright, can some brain fog be due to just not wanting to remember? I do think your brain is trying to protect you, Shelia. And yes. And so if it's continuing and it's really difficult for you to process and just feel like you're grounded and you can't get grounded, I would invite you to connect with a counselor or a therapist who can help you navigate those very difficult emotions. So let's see. So Stephanie writes, I used to watch wrestling matches with your mom and your brother. When we cheered so loud, we accidentally woke up our dad. She calmed him down and winked at us. That's a great memory, Stephanie. I'm glad you have that. Keep that. There's more memories in there. Keep them coming. Is it reasonable to sell my house where my son passed and move somewhere else? The old house makes me sad with a painful heart. Marilyn, what a great question. I did that 5 years ago. It was 5 years after Zoe died, but it's been 5 years now since I sold the house where Zoe passed away in. At that time, it was something that I had to do. If I had my druthers, I wouldn't have done it. But that's me. That was just the way I feel about it. Zoe's bedroom was a sanctuary for me. I was a sacred space for me to go in there and just feel her presence. And so maybe that's not your experience, and that's okay if it isn't. But how you navigate your home situation. Sometimes people need a new change. I worked with a coaching client last year who lost both of her children within 1 year. And she's like, I have to go. I can't stay here anymore. And she's now thriving in a new place. So everybody's different with that. And so all I would invite you to do is to really think it through. Really think it through if staying in the house is going to be harder than staying there. Than moving to a new place. Sometimes that change of scenery could be helpful. And maybe initially what you can do is to go ahead and take a long vacation in a different state or an Airbnb to see how that feels to be in a different space. I know it's not yours when you're in an Airbnb, but maybe the pain is so hard right now that this decision might need some time. I didn't want to do anything with Zoe's room for 5 years. And when it came time for me to move, I had to pack everything up. And it took 2 boxes of tissues and 3 days in order to make it happen. And it was hard. It was hard. And so everybody's different with that, but I hope that helps some. Let's see. Marilyn writes, is it reasonable to, oh, sorry, I just went through that one. Okay, so The Body Keeps the Score. I have that book, Heidi. Thank you so much for that. I hear it's a pretty dry read. I haven't gone through it yet, but I do want to read that because it's actually been on the New York Times bestseller list this year. And I hear it's really good too. So again, if reading is your thing, again, I'm going to post the book list that I recommend in the description after this is done. So, and you're welcome, Heidi, for the ART and RTM referrals. Let's see, we're getting down to the last few questions here, guys. I'm not going to answer any more questions after the ones that are in the chat room. So, but feel free to ask some questions in the comments after I post this if anything else comes up. But Nancy Brown, I keep having flashbacks of neglect from 2 hospitals and negligent doctors that caused my husband to die 5 times in front of me within a week and a half. I can't get past these images. Nancy, flashbacks are really difficult because that is a traumatic response. It is the fact that the trauma of that time has gone into your long-term memory and your brain isn't processing it. So every time you think about that and you're triggered and that memory comes back, it feels like it's happening all over again. And so if that's the case, if it's that visceral, if your emotions are showing up the same way they did when you have that memory, then please connect with a trauma specialist because that's something they can help you work through. And so, good. I'm glad that makes some sense. So Cowboy Twinkie writes, 2 months in and it's been rough. 20 years together and she died suddenly having a routine surgery. The toughest thing is coming home to an empty house. Any suggestions on how to deal with that? What a great question. And so as you're navigating this is still very fresh for you. And it's so fresh that, it's, what do I do with this? Right? What do I do with this? It's so hard to even think about. I'm sure that when you walk in that door, it's just like a gut punch of not being able to do anything about that situation. And I'm so sorry for your loss because routine surgery should be routine. This shouldn't be this way, right? This is something that shouldn't be this way. And it's so unfair that all of us are in this place, but we can't turn the clock back. We can't change what happened. And so for you at this point, I would recommend, again, family, friends, support groups, whether online or in person, or a coach or a therapist to help you navigate these really difficult moments. And so that gut punch is you're missing your spouse, you're missing your wife, and it's so hard. And I'm so sorry because I can only imagine how that feels. I felt the same way. I mean, I would walk into my house and I knew Zoe wasn't going to be there. I would go up into her bedroom and it looked exactly like it did the day she died. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I would probably use a few colorful words in that statement, but it hurts. And the best way that I navigated that, honestly, was through coaches and the therapist. And I hope that helps you, sir. Lisa Marie writes, thanks, Eric. Very good advice. I just have I just had 2 text messages from hubby's family. I'll be seeing them in the new year. I love that. I'm so glad that you did that, Lisa. And so just keep on protecting yourself. It's and taking care of yourself, folks. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please make a comment in the chat. Let me know that something you got a somewhat of an aha moment tonight, and that you feel that this is some support. I'd love to do more of these in the future, but I just want to make sure that you guys are able to get some good, help and support around this time frame, because I know how hard this time frame is. And so I'd like to wish you all as best of a holiday, Christmas as possible, and New Year's. I know, again, I'm going to be back on Thursday. Sorry, I keep on saying Thursday. Tuesday, the 26th, from 7 to 8 p.m. as like an after review, if you will, of how how the day went for you. Please do as much as you can. Go easy on yourself. If you make plans and you need to not follow through on those plans, it's okay. If you feel like going and you want to leave early, that's okay. If you are dressed and ready to go and you're out the door and you're like, nope, not doing it, that's okay. You don't owe anybody anything. You owe your healing to yourself. You owe your you owe your existence right now to healing, and that's okay, and that's all. So I hope this was helpful, folks. Thank you so much for joining tonight, and I look forward to seeing some of you or all of you on Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. So have a good night, and we will talk to you soon. Let's continue to walk together. Bye-bye.